Services Committee meeting held July 5th, 2022. Kevin O'Toole, is the chair. We have Councillor Bressie, Councillor Thiessen, and Mayor Clayton as our members of this committee. We have no delegations this morning. We have 2 reports, and we'll start off with 3.1, the Director Service Area Report. Ms. Wendy Hughes.
Thank you, through the chair. In Community Social Development, Warren Neckarak has accepted the position of the Indigenous Relation Advisor. Warren has a Bachelor of Education degree in the Indian Teacher Education Program through the University of Saskatchewan. Along with his experience and education, Warren brings a passion for advocating and supporting the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action. Warren's start date is July 11th. The OASIS MAP program, which previously provided an emergency MAP program, closed on July 1st. There are accommodation plans in place with Wapiti House and St. Lawrence Centre expanding overnight spaces to address potential gaps. Enforcement Services, CSD, and the RCMP, as well as the mobile outreach team, will continue to work with agencies during this transition. Enforcement Services will be participating in a conversation cafe in response to the noise and speeding concerns brought forward by a resident of Grand Banks. Along with the RCMP, Transportation and Traffic Engineering, the Conversation Cafe will provide an opportunity for Grand Banks residents to discuss concerns, as well as being provided with information on response efforts in the area. The event will be held tonight, July 5th at 7 p.m. at the Coca-Cola Center in the KMSC meeting room. Emergency Management reports the development of an updated regional evacuation plan. The plan is expected to be completed by the end of Q4 of 2022. The Fire Department reports regular operations as usual. The RCMP reports that on June 26, 2022, they responded to a break and enter into a business on 100th Street. After reviewing video surveillance and patrols of the area, officers identified 2 vehicles and a hotel room which was associated to the suspects. Search warrants were obtained, and during the search, recovered stolen property from the business was located, as well as clothing worn by the suspects during the break and enter, and a small amount of suspected crystal methamphetamine, as well as brass knuckles. 2 suspects who had outstanding warrants were arrested and charged. And the mobile outreach team has received new jackets for their caseworkers. The jackets will be identifiable from other outreach agencies within the community. The label of community safety will be on the backs of the jackets. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much for your report. We have Mayor Clayton. Go ahead.
Thanks for your report. Just more of a discussion rather than a question. I'm just curious, because as politicians, we hear lots of rumors in the community, but can you just confirm for me of which departments will be moving into the CCC?
Thank you, through the chair. So confirmed to be moving to the coordinated campus are Community Social Development, Community Policing, as well as GPREP and Enforcement Services.
Perfect. And so we would expect by January approximately that all of those departments will fully be integrated into the facility?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. So with OASIS closing their MAT program, did they cite any issues? Was it issues with the people staying there? Was it a lack of demand, lack of resources? Did they cite a reason?
Through the chair, the reason that was provided was it was an operational decision.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, through the chair. I had a concerned citizen email me in regards to the Oasis Center not having beds for the vulnerable, and told me that the nighttime shelter will be taking 13 of the overnight spaces, but there's 20 to 24 people who need space. Now, is the rest of those numbers going to be moved to Wapiti House or what?
Thank you, through the chair. That is correct. So both the Wapiti House as well as St. Lawrence Center have identified new spaces for the individuals.
So no one will be left without a space, is what you're saying?
Currently, no.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'll look around. Oh, Councillor Berg.
Yeah, so unrelated. With our Indigenous liaison, I missed his name other than Warren. Could you repeat that, please?
Thank you, through the chair. It's Warren Nekarak.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And is there an opportunity that we get to meet him? Is there anything scheduled?
Yes, through the chair, we could potentially make arrangements for that.
Terrific, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Look around. I see no other people wanting to ask questions, so thank you very much for your report. And we'll move on to item 3.2, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Update. Miss Angela Sutherland, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. I'm here to bring forward a report to update Council on our Committee on Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So at the October 13th PSS Committee, Committee had directed administration to bring back appropriate amendments to Council Policy 124 and also following recommendations. Number one was to implement relevant training for Council and staff to better understand the obligations and importance of EDI work, engage and consult with the community to identify systemic barriers to accessing city programs and services. And number three was to continue to leverage opportunities to collaborate with community organizations on actions to address systemic racism and discrimination. So just a brief background, for those that may not be aware, the city has been involved in inclusion work dating way back to 2006 when the city of Grande Prairie had signed on as a signatory to the Canadian, it's a long statement here, Canadian Coalition of Municipalities Against Racism and Discrimination. So in 2019, this was rebranded as Canadian Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities. As a part of this work, administration had created an Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee to help meet the objectives of inclusion. So some of the accomplishments to date include the creation of the first annual EDI report for Council and the community, which you will see in attachment 1. And this report is really to capture the highlights of the city's programs and initiatives that address system changes, gender equity, accessibility, and inclusion of racialized groups. Another success was development and implementation of 2 courses for city staff, which included the unconscious bias and addressing racism and discrimination. There was also a review of all administrative policies from an EDI lens to reduce systemic barriers, creation of a staff demographic survey to roll out with the enterprise resource planning system, and a collection of baseline data to track organizations' progress. Internally, the EDI committee continues to engage and promote information and training within the organization. There are a lot of opportunities that administration sees externally to leverage the work with groups like the Grande Prairie Local Immigration Partnership, Youth Advisory Council, community partners, and other stakeholders on actions and initiatives that promote equity, diversity, and inclusion, and to identify potential systemic barriers to accessing city services. The city's commitment to being inclusive demonstrates a commitment to creating a society where residents fully participate in all aspects of political, cultural, social, and economic life. And with that, that concludes my report. I'm really open to any questions you may have.
All right. Well, you got somebody's attention here. Councillor Bressie, go ahead.
Great. Thank you. I'm curious. I'm looking at the report, and I noticed that there was a mention made of a measure of feelings of inclusion among staff in 2019 and 2021, but I didn't see anything about the actual results of that. How are we doing? Did inclusion go up? Did it go down?
Through the chair. The survey that was conducted back then was a requirement through the, when it was called AUMA, their municipal inclusion grant. So at that time, it was quite of an intensive, not a user-friendly survey to say the least, on how to measure and capture inclusion. So at that time, they have different levels, which include culture of awareness at the very top. At the bottom is no awareness, and in between there would be awareness, and then a few different levels of, what's the word here? Different levels of measurement. So at that time we did the survey, and there was not a huge uptake, but I think moving forward, what administration would like to see is another way to demonstrate the baseline and then move from there without using the constrictions of that particular grant survey.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple, Councillor O'Toole. Would you like me to get back in line, or?
No, I will pull a favor for you, and you can keep going.
Okay, great. So my next question is: there's talk about the unconscious bias training, the other training available to, and addressing racism and discrimination. Are those mandatory for staff, or are they optional for staff?
When we rolled out these training sessions, they were not mandatory, but recommended. And one of the exciting things about this is that we were able to include it as well in part of the health and safety biz trainer database, so people can actually upload their certificates as a part of their development.
Great. And do they get to do it on our time, or do they have to do it on their own time?
We do it on our time.
Great, thank you. Or sorry, our time is
on the city's time.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, I have Councillor Thiessen. Thank you for those answers, by the way.
Thank you very much, Chair O'Toole, and thanks for the report, Ms. Sutherland. Really happy that we have something like this working through the annals of our city administration. One of my question is in regards to, I guess, point 3 of the original motion is continue to leverage opportunities to collaborate with community organizations on actions to address systemic racism and discrimination. Now, I know we do this really, really well with our First Nations community, Filipino community, lots of people in the community, but I think there's a need, and it came up at our last council meeting when we were talking about Ukrainian citizens coming to the city to try to make a life leaving Ukraine. And one of the biggest barriers that they faced was the language barrier. So in this report that you included, like sort of the middle pillar, it says the city become the backbone organization for the Grande Prairie Local Immigration Partnership in 2015. A committee designed to create a welcoming community for immigrants and develop a local settlement strategy. So that's central to this big chart here. And the reason why I bring it up is there something that the city can do more in partnership with the Grande Prairie Local Immigration Partnership, or as far as establishing like consistent, I guess, language training so that there are no barriers to being able to be an active member of society? And to me, I find that perhaps the biggest barrier for immigrants is the language barrier. It prevents them from being engaged in the social fabric of our community. It prevents them from being engaged in the productive fabric of our community and getting employment. Is there anything more that we could do, or that a report like this and our situation, that we can maybe work to get more language training, either through an external or through the city?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. I think that the Grande Prairie Local Immigration Partnership, this is one of their key focus areas in terms of understanding and being aware of the fact of the language barriers with people in our community. And as a result of the delegation that came forward, Mr. Parks, we've been in contact with him, and we're going to actually bring the groups together and talk about this very issue, as well as how to leverage what the need is with the Ukrainian refugees, in addition to getting more data around exactly what the needs are in terms of what is the barrier. Is it the amount of classes? Because we know that lifelong learning has classes, and so we're going to bring them to the table and talk about that as well, and come back with a report on discussing how we're attacking it all with all the different stakeholders involved.
Wow, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. So thank you very much for your answer to my very long question. Appreciate it.
I hope Dylan didn't take any of your questions that you wanted, because I'd feel bad because you were next in queue. I got Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair O'Toole. Congratulations on the great work. I think this is excellent. A couple considerations. Did you involve any community stakeholders? And what I'm thinking, organizations such as Northwest Polytech, the Chamber of Commerce, other organizations in our community may want to adopt something similar. And I wonder if we can be the catalyst for their plans. And I'm just wondering if any of those conversations took place.
Thank you, through the chair. I think that is one of the things that we're working on moving forward. When we talk about continued leverage opportunities with external stakeholders, there's huge opportunities here to be that catalyst. And I think that the leverage point is through the local immigration partnership and continue to have those conversations to see if the Northwest Polytech could be a part of that. And as well, a part of our external, when we talk about external engagement, it is around showcasing the expertise that we've learned in-house and share that with the community so we can build their capacity.
Yeah, that's great. I think that there's really a big opportunity with the Chamber of Commerce, and if you were to work with them and potentially do a lunch and learn or something where small businesses, medium-sized businesses could adopt some of these because they don't have the capacity internally to establish these plans themselves. So if there are elements of this that can be adopted within a business, I think it would be great. The other question I had, if I may, Chair O'Toole, is you said that it's not mandatory training, and I'm curious why. We have policies such as scent policies, et cetera, that, in my opinion, are much less impactful than this, that are mandatory. So why wouldn't we make this mandatory?
Through the chair, that is a great question. I think at the time, I think management had directed that it wouldn't be mandatory, but I think that's open up for discussion, depending on CLT and where they would like to go with that.
Yeah, and I'm happy to have a discussion with our CAO or our deputy CAO, one or the other, just to start with council and look at that consideration. But as I was doing some training last night online, some of that stuff is really simple, and this is much more significant and impactful than some of the mandatory policies for training we already have. So thank you for your work.
We have Councillor Bressie.
Great. I'm just curious, you mentioned in the report that work's being done to identify systemic barriers. Is there going to be any report back to council on that work? How are we going to be aware of what systemic barriers management's finding?
Through the chair, there's great questions today. So I think the plan for administration moving forward is to work on that particular area. We've done a lot of work internally now, and I think it's time to really leverage it and take it out. And so I think regards to the systemic barriers, we would have to consult with other members of administration to best package that in a way that we can deliver it to the community to get their input on that. And a part of that, I think, would be bringing it back to council for an update.
Okay, great. Is that something, if I want to see back at council, that I need to be making a motion and trying to get a motion passed, or is that something you anticipate will naturally come to us at some point?
I think it could come back through the chair. I think it could come back naturally.
You're all good?
Yeah, I'm good. I've got a couple motions I want to make when we get to that part of this.
Let Ms. Okay.
All right. Thanks, Chair O'Toole. Just a quick comment about the mayor's comment about the policy making it mandatory or not. So we'll add it to the CLT agenda item as an agenda item for next week, and Mr. Nicolay's back as well.
Fair enough. We'll let Councillor Bosch, and then you can do your business.
Thank you, Chair O'Toole. I guess I have a question in regards to some of this information for the public. Can we be somewhat of a porthole through our website that if the citizens are interested in working on inclusion diversity, that we can put some of our documents online for them, potentially not look after them getting a certificate. But I think knowledge is power. And if more of our citizens want to get involved and to see what this is about, if they're not already doing it, I think we could be a catalyst to bring information to our citizens.
Through the chair, I think that's an excellent idea, and that was part of the conversation that we've been having on how to work outwards now with this. And I think that will be a part of the discussion with our communications department and how to package that in a way that we can put on our local communication channels.
I think it's our responsibility to model, some of the good things that we're doing and present it to everyone and other municipalities too, perhaps. Thank you.
Yeah, I can think of one opportunity would be the neighborhood associations. Mr. Bressie, you're on the spotlight now.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to make some motions if that's okay. So the first one would be I'd move the committee direct administration to bring a report at the end of. Sorry, let me rephrase this. I'd move the committee direct administration to bring a year-end report highlighting how many staff have completed unconscious bias and racism and discrimination training. And just speak to this personally, I think we probably should talk about making this mandatory. At the very least, I want to see a lot of staff going. I would love to see a big staff uptake. And maybe there's a place for council to give specific direction on that in the future, but I think the first step to changing something is just to measure it. And this will let us see how are these initiatives picking up over the year. And also just, I think it signals to management that, hey, this is actually important for council, so maybe it's something you folks might want to prioritize. So I think let's measure it at the end of the year and then have some conversations early in 2023 about if we need more specific direction from council or if we're happy with what's going on.
That motion's in order. Any discussion? I see none. Call for the vote. And that passes unanimously. You had a second motion that you'd like to make.
Yeah. You know, I've been contemplating making one on reporting back on those systemic barriers, but I'll leave that for now since we know this is coming back to us and that'll be a good pickup point. But just that is a conversation that I hope that committee doesn't lose, is that important work that's going on in management. I think there's a role for council insight in that. But I won't make a motion about that right now. I'll just move that we receive this report for information.
Okay. That motion's in order. And I see nobody jumping up and down. We'll call for the vote. And that passes unanimously. All right. Thank you, Ms. Sutherland, for your report. And we'll move on to correspondence. We have none. We have one item of other business. We have 5.1, RCMP K Division introduction. Mr. Peter King, officer in charge, would you like to bring your guest up and meet council and administration?
Mayor and Council. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce our new officer in charge, Superintendent Lee Brockman, newly arrived to Grande Prairie, and will be assuming his duties tomorrow officially. So I pass the floor over to Superintendent Brockman.
Good morning, Chair, Mayor, Council. Pleasure to be here. My name is Lee Brockman, and I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to come and speak today and to meet everybody. It's a pleasure to be in Grande Prairie. We're just in the middle of unpacking our stuff after our relocation, so looking forward to hitting the ground running tomorrow and for the moving forward from there. So I guess just a bit of background about myself and my kind of experience in my career. So I started my career up in northwestern Alberta. Actually, I spent about 7 years in the high level and Fort Vermilion areas before I went down to Calgary, where I spent about a year or so with Alert on a combined forces special enforcement unit, looking at marijuana growing operations. And then from there, I moved into detachment commander roles. So I was the detachment commander of the Killam-Forestburg detachment out in the Eastern Alberta district. I was also in charge of the St. Paul detachment as well in the eastern part of the province. From there, I moved up to our district, our district office, where I was an advisory NCO for about a year and a half or so. And then I moved over to, took a promotion to be the officer in charge of the Lloydminster RCMP detachment. That's where I'm coming from now. So really excited to be here in Grande Prairie as the new officer in charge of the Grande Prairie detachment, and looking forward to working with city and council administration and advancing our community safety and wellness priorities. Yeah, so I'm open to any questions. I guess on a personal level, I'm here with a family, my wife and 3 daughters. We're really excited to be, part of the community and getting started in school and work. My wife is a teacher. She's going to be working at a school here in the city as well. So overall, really happy to be here, and thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much. We just got a new skateboard park opened up. Actually, not skateboard, skills park, bike skills park, and it's good. So, anything else, Ms. Black?
Miss Blackmore. That's very nice. Thank you.
Counselor.
This is a general overall concern that I have with the detachment, and it's been ongoing for years and years and years. We are fortunate enough to get many young trainees who are sent to Grande Prairie, and then we keep sending them away from training, so they're not actually here working. Can you get us some like more mature men and women?
So I guess in terms of staffing and retention, definitely it's actually Peter and I have been talking about that a little bit this morning already. In terms of, we get a lot of newer members at a depot. How can we attract some experienced members or more experienced members into the city, and how do we keep them here for longer periods of time, right? And so that's something that's on our radar and something that we're going to be looking at and kind of tasking and working with our staffing folks as well. So.
If I might add there as well, with our Municipal Police Advisory Committee, through our APP consultation, we added through enhanced service delivery one particular line item where we were going to have meetings with our staffing individual and headquarters with our Municipal Police Advisory Committee to discuss and allow the committee have face-to-face contact with the decision makers on the staffing level so they can express their frustration and your frustration with the revolving door, the perceived revolving door here in Grande Prairie. So I think that was a massive step forward in a positive direction for us and for the committee itself, because it allowed the committee to express and have that one-on-one contact. So they now know, they don't hear it just from us, they hear it from the people who are making the decisions, who are having the impact, who are receiving the complaints from the community. So they're having the right people at the right table to express their frustrations. And I think it's going to work out well for us in the near future.
Councillor Bressie.
Great. Yeah, and thanks, Mr. King, for the context on that. And it seems like that staff retention and that length would be kind of unusual in an APP. I haven't seen a lot of other APPs, but it seems like that would be unusual, and that really did come out of a lot of conversation with Mr. King and other staff here there. And I guess just say that to say we've really appreciated the last couple of years how much engagement we've had as a council and as a police advisory committee with Mr. King and his predecessors, and with even with K Division, and we've noticed a lot more responsiveness over the last couple of years. And I think there's still a lot of work to do in this community, and especially, frankly, on the non-policing side of things that really impacts policing. Still a lot of work to do, but personally, I think there's been a lot of improvement, and I think that's because there's been a lot stronger relationship between the detachment and council and the community. And so that's just something to report to you, that's been a good thing happening in our community, and really good start. I really appreciate you coming here, and it's before you even officially assume duties. So I really appreciate that it looks like you're on that road to continuing up that good work. So thank you for being here today, and sorry for holding you back from unpacking.
Oh, no need at all. No, it's good to hear, and I think working with the communities is a critical part of police and public safety, right? And we need to be in tune and hearing what the community has to say about what's going on in terms of what they see as being our priorities, right? And that's where that relationship with you folks as the elected officials, as well as with various community groups, is critically important. And so I look forward to building on that relationship even further.
Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair O'Toole. Welcome to Grande Prairie. Thanks for coming. You will love this community, and we hope you stay long, as mentioned. I'm curious, in the past, councils have had an opportunity to meet with K Division when we go to our annual sort of Alberta Municipalities conference. I'm wondering if you could look into setting up a meeting for this council in Grande Prairie with K Division. I know Mr. Zablocki had mentioned when Councillor Bressie and I ran into him, invite me up. I'm happy to come up anytime. So if you could follow through on that, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor. Your Worship, I don't see that being an issue, and we'll work with the CO's office on that. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just got one thing. Grande Prairie is very open to ideas. So if there's something that pops into your toolkit and you think it might work here, run it past council, and maybe we can endorse it and support it. So.
Absolutely, no, that's fantastic to hear, and I'm aware of a lot of the great initiatives that are already going on, And yeah, so I look forward to that.
Perfect. All right. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair O'Toole. Thanks for being here, Mr. King, and welcome to the city of Grande Prairie, Mr. Brockman. Like the mayor said, you're going to love it here. It's a glorious community and lots to do, more than anybody ever really imagines it. Now, in the past, I guess my question for you is, sometimes when we're in the process of fighting crime, or I guess crime syndicates, you know, gangsters transporting guns or weapons or drugs or whatever, sometimes the communication hasn't always been perfect between K Division and the other divisions of our RCMP, especially when we get out of their jurisdictions. As new superintendent, how will you seek to improve those and get better communication and information sharing so that we can stop crime faster before it hits our city?
I mean, in terms of, you know, I guess you're referring to specifically the operational intelligence process, right? How do we get to share that intelligence and get to know kind of what's going on, right? You know, I think, you know, and I can talk to Peter a little bit offline a little bit more about that. But in terms of, you know, what's going on currently with our intelligence processes and what can we do to strengthen that? But you know, I think overall, and it's you know, it's something I've seen in my last posting on a border city such as Lloydminster, right? I mean, a lot of the times, you know, crime has no borders and things like that, and so we need to make sure that our policing services and our intelligence sharing is equally as fluid, right, and can move across you know, various detachment boundaries and lines. And so you know, in saying that, I will want to I guess take a look at what are we doing currently, and if there are gaps, how can we fill those gaps so we can ensure that, you know, the right people are knowing the right things at the right time, so we can I guess be proactive in stopping some of the serious crimes from occurring, right? Whether that's from the drug trade, from gangs, you know, firearms trafficking, all that kind of stuff. And in terms of information sharing within our communities as well, you know, making sure that we can provide as much information as we are able to do so without putting investigations into jeopardy.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that. Actually, the whole basis for that question was when you said you were from Lloydminster. I'm like, ooh, because usually that's where we find most of our roadblocks is between borders with the RCMP. And
can I add, please?
You bet.
I can report that because of our proximity to BC, we do have a very strong working relationship with particularly Dawson Creek and Fort St. John detachments, and we work. We actually sidebar or sidestep a bit of the red tape. And we have a very open line of communication, which has proven to be very successful and timely arrests for traveling criminals. So we have the official, and then we have a very quick and fluid ability to communicate to make those immediate decisions. So we do have that well-established line of communication, and we do share information quite rapidly. And probably to my failure not to report it enough to you guys, the success stories of the interaction between the two divisional, particularly drug work and crew work. So,
oh, thank you very much. Thanks for chipping in. I love the supplemental, and I love knowing that that's happening. And like Chair O'Toole said, if there's any innovations to improve the service, Grande Prairie is always game and willing to listen. So, yeah, thank you so much for all the work you do. And again, welcome to Grande Prairie.
I'll just ask around the table if there's any more comments or questions. Thank you very much for attending today. It's much appreciated. And I know you guys are busy, and like you said, probably got some unpacking to do, so we'll let you go. And with that, thanks.
Thank you, Chair.
No. Unless it's groceries. Okay. We have no items of correspondence, no bylaw policies to review, but we do have an outstanding items list. And can you update that, please?
Thank you through the chair. So the 4 items that are listed on the outstanding items list are reported on target as scheduled. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Thiessen?
Thank you very much, Chair O'Toole. I just make a motion that committee approve the outstanding items list as information.
Thank you very much.
Something like that.
Call for the vote. Fellow councillors, that carried unanimously, and thank you all, the administration that supported this meeting today. It's much appreciated. And that's a wrap. Thank you.